A shocking video of Jungkook crying alone in a studio after Jimin's public humiliation spreads like wildfire. What really happened behind the camera? You think you're untouchable just because you're the golden boy? Jimin's voice cracked through the tense air like a whip, sharp, accusing, devastating. The words hadn't even fully left his lips when the room fell into absolute stillness. The rehearsal lights above flickered slightly, casting long, uneven shadows across the polished wooden floor of the studio. Sweat glistened on Jungkook's neck as he stood frozen, mid-step, his chest rising and falling faster than his breath could catch up. His eyes wide, disoriented, locked onto Jimin's, searching for something, anything, to hold on to. But Jimin had already turned his back. Around them, the crew shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. A camera assistant lowered their gear, unsure whether to keep recording. Taehyung's lips parted slightly, as if to speak, but he said nothing. No one did. Jungkook stumbled back a half step, blinking as if the world had just punched him in the gut. He could still hear the echo. Untouchable. He didn't know which part hurt more, that it was said at all, or that it was said by Jimin. The burn in his chest was immediate. Not just embarrassment, humiliation. Something far deeper. The kind that makes your skin prickle and your throat tighten. He swallowed hard, his jaw tightening, but he didn't respond. He couldn't. Not here, not now, not with everyone watching. Without a word, he turned sharply and walked. No, escaped from the center of the room, his footsteps quick and silent across the floor, toward the back of the studio, where the lighting was dim and the corners forgotten. He didn't see the intern behind the curtain. He didn't see the small DSLR, still rolling, tucked between stacked soundproof panels. He only saw the corner. The one he always ended up in when the noise inside him got too loud. And when he reached it, he collapsed against the wall, slid down to the floor with his knees drawn up, and pressed the back of his hand to his mouth. The first sob slipped out before he could stop it. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. His shoulders trembled as another one followed. Then another. Somewhere in the studio, the music restarted. Yoongi must have pressed play to break the silence, but Jungkook didn't hear it. All he heard was his own breath, ragged, his own voice, cracked and broken in a whisper only he could hear. Why did he say that? The question wasn't for anyone. It wasn't even for Jimin. It was for himself, for the version of him that tried so hard to be everything everyone expected, the version of him that thought stupidly. Maybe that Jimin would understand. But Jimin had looked at him like he was nothing more than a spotlight-chasing imposter. Jungkook wiped his eyes quickly with the sleeve of his black rehearsal shirt, the cotton already damp. He didn't want to be seen like this. Not again. He thought he was past this phase, past crying alone, past letting words get under his skin. But Jimin's words didn't just cut. They carved. He reached into his pocket, fumbling for his phone not to text anyone. He just needed something to hold, something to distract him, something real. That's when the studio door creaked open. Again, a shadow moved in his peripheral vision, tall and slow, pausing at the edge of the hall leading toward the back exit. Jungkook didn't lift his head. He didn't want anyone to see him this way, not even Taehyung, not even himself. But the shadow moved closer. The footsteps were careful, familiar. Jungkook stiffened. A low voice spoke, not too loud, not too soft, just enough to be heard over the pulsing beat that filled the background. That wasn't fair. Jungkook looked up. Taehyung. He stood there in his oversized hoodie, arms crossed, leaning against the wall opposite Jungkook like he was waiting for permission to come closer. His eyes didn't carry pity. They carried something heavier. Anger, maybe, or guilt. Jungkook looked away. Don't. Taehyung didn't move. You don't have to act strong right now. Jungkook laughed, bitter, hoarse. Then when? When the whole world's already watching the replay. Taehyung exhaled, jaw clenching. He didn't mean it like that. Then how did he mean it? Jungkook snapped, suddenly lifting his gaze. Because I swear to God, if one more person tells me that Jimin's just stressed, or in his head, I'm going to... His voice cracked again. The tears that had dried for a moment came rushing back with full force. Taehyung crouched beside him slowly, not saying a word this time, just being there. Jungkook hated how much that helped. I didn't do anything, Jungkook whispered after a long silence. I didn't deserve that. I know. More silence. Then Jungkook muttered, why is he like this lately? One moment he's joking with me. The next he looks at me like I'm the enemy. Taehyung hesitated. There was a truth there, one he wasn't sure Jungkook was ready to hear. Instead, he said, "You need to get out of here. Breathe, before the others start asking questions." Jungkook nodded, even though his legs didn't move. "Come on," Taehyung added gently, holding out a hand. But before Jungkook could take it, another voice echoed from the hallway, sharp, anxious. "Where's Jungkook?" "Yoongi." Jungkook froze. Taehyung stood, walking out to intercept the noise. In that brief moment of aloneness, Jungkook closed his eyes and drew in a breath. It was too late now. That camera in the corner, the one he didn't see, had already caught everything. And somewhere in that studio, someone was already uploading it. The world was about to see the side of Jungkook he tried hardest to hide. And nothing would ever be the same again. "Delete it! Now!" The words cut through the air like a gunshot. Jimin stood in the middle of the corridor, voice low but laced with a threat none of the staff dared ignore. His jaw was clenched so tightly that the veins in his neck pulsed, and his left hand trembled ever so slightly by his side. The junior tech assistant, just a temp, probably no older than 20, froze mid-scroll, his thumb hovering over the playback of the raw rehearsal footage on his tablet. The small screen flickered, showing Jungkook in the corner of the studio, head buried in his knees, shoulders shaking uncontrollably. The image was already burned into Jimin's memory. He took 2 steps forward, slow, measured. "That footage isn't going anywhere, you understand?" The assistant nodded so fast, his glasses slipped down the bridge of his nose. "Yes, I was just organizing takes." "Erase it." Behind them, the studio echoed faintly with muffled beats from the sound system. But the tension in the hallway was louder, like a scream trapped beneath skin. Jimin's eyes narrowed. "You think I'm playing?" "No, I'll delete it right now. I swear." The boy fumbled with the tablet, almost dropping it, and tapped the screen nervously. Jimin's arms were crossed tightly across his chest, his nails digging into the fabric of his own sleeves, as if anchoring himself from something dangerous clawing inside. When the assistant finally turned the screen to show the footage file gone, Jimin nodded once. Cold. Final. "Don't speak a word of this to anyone." Then he turned and walked away. But it was already too late. Jimin humiliated Jungkook? What's happening with BTS? Leaked. Jungkook caught crying after rehearsal drama. Army divided over Jimin's harsh treatment. What really happened? The internet wasn't waiting for truth. By the time Jimin stepped out of the studio that evening, his phone vibrated with a dozen missed calls and hundreds of notifications. His social media inboxes were flooded. His name was trending. And so was Jungkook's. He didn't check any of them. Instead, he slipped into the back seat of the black van waiting in the alley behind the Hybe building, pulled his cap low, and said only one word to the driver. Home. Jungkook didn't go home. Not yet. He was still in the building. In a small, unused room near the basement, where the walls were unpainted concrete and the light was a single bulb hanging from a rusty chain. He sat on a crate, hunched forward, hands clasped tightly between his knees. Taehyung was pacing in front of him. "You can't just disappear," Taehyung muttered, voice sharp with frustration. "They're all looking for you. Yoongi thinks you walked out. Namjoon's trying to get statements ready in case this blows up." "It already did," Jungkook replied flatly. Taehyung stopped. "No, not the way it could. Not if it spreads to the wrong hands." Jungkook looked up slowly. His eyes were puffy and red, but no longer wet. They were dry, tired, dangerous. "So we cover it up? Pretend I didn't break down? Pretend he didn't say what he said? Do you want more people to see that video? Do you want to talk about what's really happening?" Jungkook shot back. "Because I do. I want to know why the person who used to look out for me like a brother now talks to me like I'm a stranger. Worse, like I'm disposable." Taehyung opened his mouth but said nothing. The silence throbbed. Then Jungkook stood, his voice rising. "Do you know what it feels like to stand in front of the person you trust the most, only for them to pull the rug out from under you in front of the entire staff?" Taehyung's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm done pretending," Jungkook whispered. "I'm done covering for him." A long pause. "Then say it," Taehyung challenged. "Say what you think he's doing. Say what's been eating you alive for the past month." Jungkook's eyes darkened. "He resents me." Taehyung didn't move. "He thinks I'm taking the spotlight, that I'm too popular, that the fans love me more than they love him, that I'm..." Jungkook's voice broke, but he kept going. That I'm becoming the face of something he thinks he deserves more. Taehyung turned his back. Jungkook kept going. But I never asked for that. I never wanted to outshine anyone. I just wanted to be good at what I love. Is that a crime now? Taehyung finally turned, his own anger surfacing. It's not just that, Jungkook. It's the distance, the way you've changed. You've been colder lately, detached. You hide things. You don't talk. So it's my fault now? No one's blameless. That hit hard. The silence that followed was suffocating. Taehyung took a breath. What happened between you and Jimin isn't just about today. It's been building for months, and neither of you talked about it. You both just kept smiling in front of the fans and biting your tongues off camera. Jungkook sat back down, chest rising. Taehyung sat across from him now, voice lower. You were always his soft spot. You know that? Jungkook looked up. Doesn't feel like it. Maybe that's the problem, Taehyung muttered. He sees your growth as distance, and you see his tension as betrayal. And neither of you has the guts to say it to each other's face. Jungkook swallowed. What should I do? He asked quietly. Taehyung hesitated. Talk to him. Jungkook laughed bitterly. So he can insult me again? No. So you can fight like real people, not shadows. Jungkook stared at the floor for a long time, then nodded. The next day, Jungkook was the first to arrive at the studio. He wore black from head to toe, hood up, earbuds in. But he wasn't listening to music. He was listening to silence. The door creaked open exactly 13 minutes later. Jimin entered. Alone, their eyes met across the room. No words. Just tension. Thick enough to snap. Jungkook removed his earbuds slowly. Jimin tossed his bag in the corner. The silence stretched. Finally, Jimin spoke. You cried? Jungkook blinked. You cried, and they filmed it. Jimin repeated, his voice flat, unreadable. And now the world thinks I'm a monster. You said I thought I was untouchable. I was angry. You meant it. Jimin didn't deny it. Jungkook stepped closer. So say it now. Whatever you've been holding in. All of it. Jimin's jaw tightened. Fine. He stepped forward, eyes burning. You walk around like the world owes you applause. You've been distant. Cold. Like none of us matter anymore unless there's a camera rolling. You chase perfection like it'll fix everything. But it won't. I'm not chasing perfection. You're chasing validation. Jungkook's voice cracked. From who? You? Jimin stepped closer again. From everyone. From the fans. From yourself. And it's driving you off a cliff. Jungkook's fists curled. Jimin didn't stop. You think crying made you a victim? You think that video makes you real? No. What makes you real is telling the people who care about you that you're not okay before you implode in the corner of a fake King studio. The words hung in the air like broken glass. And then Jungkook's voice came. Quiet. Cold. I would have told you. Jimin's breath caught. I would have told you everything, Jungkook whispered, if you hadn't made me feel like telling you was weakness. A pause. Jimin stepped back. His eyes, once blazing, now dimmed. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said finally. But it did. They stood there, neither knowing how to close the wound now left open. I'm tired, Jungkook said. I know. And just like that, the door opened again. Yoongi, Seokjin, Namjoon, Hoseok, Taehyung. One by one, the rest of BTS walked in, each carrying silence like a storm cloud. Namjoon looked at both of them. Sit, he ordered. And they did. The meeting lasted hours. Everything came out, every feeling, every frustration, every wound stitched shut and ripped open again. Voices were raised, tears spilled, not just from Jungkook this time. Jimin broke down halfway through. Namjoon had to stop twice to breathe. Taehyung's voice shook. Yoongi threw his cap across the room at one point. But when it ended, they sat in the quiet, tired, hollow, but lighter. Something had broken. But something had been rebuilt too. Not completely. Not perfectly. But enough. Enough for now. What they didn't know was that while they reconciled behind closed doors, the world outside was still spinning. The video had been deleted from its source, but not before someone had screen recorded it. It was spreading again, and this time it had subtitles. Jungkook cries alone after Jimin humiliates him. Exclusive footage. The internet was thirsty, and someone was about to take advantage of that thirst for profit, for clout, for revenge. But that would be tomorrow's war. Tonight, for the first time in weeks, Jungkook went home and slept. Not peacefully, but without nightmares. The explosion didn't come with fire. It came with silence. A deadly, suffocating silence that spread across the building like poison gas. By 7:13 a.m. the next morning, the link had already been viewed 2 million times. A mirror upload on a private fan-run site. A screen recording in 4K resolution. Jungkook crumbling to the floor, sobbing in the corner of the studio. The trembling of his voice when he whispered, "Why did he say that?" Captured, amplified, frozen. The public had not just seen it. They had devoured it. Every forum, every timeline, every trending hashtag was filled with nothing but that one moment. Speculation, rage, tears, defense, betrayal. The word Jimin was now side by side with bully in trending charts across 8 countries. In another part of Seoul, a PR manager's phone rang non-stop. Her face pale, her hands shaking as she tried to type a statement that wouldn't bury BTS alive. Meanwhile, Jungkook sat on the floor of his bedroom in near total darkness, his back against the wall, his phone buzzing beside him like a vulture circling a corpse. He didn't want to look at it, but he did. The clip was everywhere, and the comments were even worse. "I never thought I'd say this, but Jimin needs to leave the group. Protect Jungkook at all costs. This is unacceptable. It's not just a fight, it's a pattern. He's been cold for months." He cried. He actually cried, and no one helped him. Jungkook dropped the phone. A knock on the door startled him. He didn't move. The knock came again, this time followed by a voice he recognized immediately, Yoongi. "Jungkook, it's me. Let me in." Still, Jungkook hesitated. "It's getting worse," Yoongi said from the other side. "You need to see what Hybe's doing." That made Jungkook move. He unlocked the door and stepped back. Yoongi entered with a laptop under his arm, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "They're going to spin this," he said, walking past Jungkook to the desk and opening the device. "They're preparing a joint apology." Jungkook blinked. "For what?" "For the video. For the misunderstanding. For your emotions being misunderstood. For Jimin's stress being taken out of context. Pick your poison. They're trying to patch a bullet wound with a Band-Aid." Jungkook leaned over the screen. He read the draft once, then twice. His voice came low and bitter. "They're making it sound like I was acting." Yoongi shut the laptop hard. "Because they're scared. They know what this could turn into. They're trying to make it all go away before sponsors start pulling out." "I didn't ask for damage control. You think that matters?" Jungkook's hands curled into fists on the table. "Where's Jimin?" Yoongi didn't answer right away. Then carefully, in a meeting with Bang Si-hyuk and HR and legal. Jungkook's heart dropped. Legal? Someone leaked internal footage. Someone inside. That's a breach of multiple NDAs. Jungkook stepped back from the desk. "You think he did it?" "No," Yoongi said. "I think someone wanted to hurt him, through you." Jungkook's mind raced. "Do you remember everyone who was in the studio that day?" Yoongi asked. Jungkook nodded slowly. "The usual crew. Tech, lighting, a few assistants. There was a name on the security roster that day that shouldn't have been there," Yoongi said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a printed photo. Jungkook stared. The face looked familiar, but he couldn't place it. "His name's Do-hyun," Yoongi said. "Used to be a social media intern for one of Hybe's marketing subsidiaries. Fired last year after being caught selling behind-the-scenes content to sassing groups." Jungkook's stomach dropped. "Someone let him in?" he asked. Yoongi nodded. "He used an old ID. Said he was there to help with archiving. No one checked." Jungkook felt like he couldn't breathe. So the video was recorded from a personal camera he hid near the sound wall. The staff found it this morning during a sweep. Jungkook sat down. Hard. Yoongi kept going. "We have 2 choices. Let Hybe control the narrative, or tell the truth. The full truth." Jungkook looked up. "And what if the truth hurts more than the lie?" Yoongi's eyes didn't waver. "Then at least it's yours." A long silence passed between them. Then Jungkook whispered, "I want to talk to Jimin." The meeting was not scheduled. It was demanded. Jimin stood alone in the practice room when Jungkook walked in. The tension was immediate. It pressed against the glass windows like a storm trying to break through. "You saw the leak?" Jungkook asked. Jimin nodded. Jungkook stepped closer. "You think I leaked it?" Jimin looked him dead in the eyes. "No, but someone did. And they wanted it to destroy both of us." Jungkook's jaw twitched. "Then why is Hybe acting like I need to apologize?" "Because they're panicking," Jimin said. "Because the internet has already chosen a villain." Jungkook's voice rose. "That's not my fault." "I didn't say it was." Jimin took a deep breath, then exhaled. "I don't want this to end us." Jungkook stared. "Don't say anything yet," Namjoon said as he closed the door behind him, a stack of printed documents clutched in his hand like they were radioactive. The room was dim, the only light coming from the hanging LED panels that glowed a harsh, pale blue over the meeting table. Yoongi, Seokjin, Hoseok, Jimin, Taehyung, and Jungkook all sat around the oval desk in near silence. The group hadn't gathered like this in months, not with this kind of weight in the air, not with the understanding that one name, one truth, one wrong word could ruin everything they'd fought for. Namjoon placed the papers in the center of the table. "Security finished the internal investigation," he said flatly. "It wasn't just a leak, it was a buyout. Someone inside Hybe authorized temporary access clearance to Do-hyun's expired credentials. That means this wasn't a random act of revenge or desperation. It was planned, paid." Jimin straightened in his seat. His jaw tightened. Taehyung blinked slowly, the lines around his eyes dark. Yoongi leaned forward. "Who paid him?" Namjoon's expression didn't change as he pushed one paper forward. The name was printed in sharp black ink at the top of the form. The moment Jungkook saw it, his breath stopped. It was a name no one expected. Park Min-jae, Jimin's older cousin, former Hybe liaison, once trusted, once welcomed, once family. "What the f***?" Jimin's voice was hoarse, disbelieving. Namjoon exhaled, calm but cold. He was let go from the company 6 months ago, after a silent HR investigation into unauthorized data transfers. They buried it to avoid headlines. He signed an NDA and disappeared. Until now. Jimin stood so fast his chair skidded back with a metallic screech. "No," he muttered. "He wouldn't do this. Not to me, not to us." Namjoon handed him a second sheet: transaction logs, wire transfers, IP addresses, approval stamps. "He did," Namjoon said. "And not just once, multiple times. He sold private rehearsal footage, strategy documents, set lists, stage drafts. This wasn't a one-time betrayal. It was a pattern." Jimin's hands trembled. "He's family," he whispered almost to himself. "And maybe that's why he thought he'd never be caught," Yoongi said, voice dry. Seokjin hadn't said a word until now, but when he did, it cut. "He knew this would pit you and Jungkook against each other." Jimin looked at Jungkook, the same flicker of guilt, but this time, layered with something deeper horror. "You think I was part of it?" Jimin's voice cracked. "No," Jungkook said immediately. "No, but you brought him close." Taehyung broke the tension with a sharp question. "So what now? Hybe's just going to keep this quiet again?" Namjoon shook his head. "They can't. Not anymore. The board's voting tomorrow. They're considering a public lawsuit. Damage control won't cut it. Someone has to take the fall." Everyone looked at Jimin. "No," Jungkook said before anyone could speak. "This wasn't his doing." Yoongi nodded. "But he has to make a statement. If he stays silent, the press will destroy him." Jimin sank back into his chair, eyes distant. "He was jealous," he said hollowly, "of everything. Of my career. Of the fact that I was the one who made it while he got stuck in paperwork. He told me once that I should watch my back." There was silence for a long moment. Then Namjoon leaned forward. "Do you want to press charges?" Jimin didn't answer. "Jimin," Seokjin said gently, "if you don't, Hybe might." Jimin finally looked up. "Then let them. I don't want to see his face again." Namjoon nodded. He gathered the papers, stood, and left the room without another word. As soon as the door clicked shut, Jimin turned toward Jungkook. "I don't know how to fix this," he said softly. "I don't know if I ever can." Jungkook didn't speak. He reached out instead, placing a hand over Jimin's shaking fingers. A simple gesture, but powerful. Let's start with the truth, he said. The press conference was scheduled for the following afternoon. Hybe's lawyers had crafted a meticulous script, but Jimin refused to use it. I want my own words, he told them, standing on the stage alone while camera crews set up and reporters whispered in rows. The room filled with clicks and flashes as the lights came on. He took the mic. My name is Park Jimin, he began, voice steady but tight. And I stand before you not as a member of BTS, but as a human being, one who made mistakes, one who was betrayed, and one who's learning that silence can be just as damaging as words. The room went quiet. I've been accused of humiliating a bandmate, of losing control, of becoming cold. And to some degree, that's true. I did say things I regret. I let tension fester instead of speaking. But what you saw in that video was a manipulated moment. Leaked not out of concern, but for profit. It was never meant to be seen. And that's what hurts the most. He paused, then added, not because I got caught, but because Jungkook was hurt, because someone used him as bait, and because someone who shares my blood was behind it. Gasps echoed across the hall. Jimin kept going. My cousin, Park Min-jae, acted alone. He accessed Hybe's systems with fraudulent credentials. He planted a hidden camera. He sold the footage. And he did it with full knowledge that it would create chaos. Hybe has chosen to pursue legal action. I support that decision. There were no cards in his hands. No notes. Just truth. I will not be stepping down. I will not run. I will face this with transparency. And I will rebuild the trust I've broken both with my brothers and with all of you watching. I bowed deeply. Thank you. The flash of cameras was blinding. The footage would go viral within minutes. But this time, it would not be of Jungkook crying. It would be of Jimin standing tall, owning every fracture. A lever. Backstage, Jungkook waited. He hadn't seen the statement live. He hadn't needed to. When Jimin walked through the curtain, they met in silence. Jungkook opened his arms. And for the first time in weeks, Jimin didn't hesitate. He walked into the hug like a man walking into sunlight. Thank you, he whispered. Jungkook didn't let go. But not everyone in the building was celebrating. In a small conference room 3 floors above, a Hybe executive closed his laptop, rubbed his temples, and muttered to his assistant, "That should buy us a few weeks." The assistant nodded, then hesitated. "There's something else," she said. The exec looked up. "What?" She slid over a file. "Another breach," he frowned. "Another leak," she nodded grimly. "But this time, it's not about Jimin or Jungkook." The exec flipped the file open. His eyes widened. "Turn it off," Namjoon said, voice sharp, low, but with an edge that sliced through the tense air like broken glass. The screen in the conference room kept playing, frame by frame, second by second. But no one moved. No one dared. The footage was grainy, low resolution, clearly from a hidden angle, but what it captured didn't need clarity. It needed silence. And it got it. On screen, a private room. Hybe's inner corridor, the green room usually reserved for pre-interviews. A couch. A coat rack. A glass bottle on the table. And Taehyung, not performing, not smiling, sitting across from someone not visible in frame, his voice caught clearly on the hidden microphone, every syllable perfectly audible. "I'm tired of pretending," Taehyung said in the video, his voice low, bitter. "They think we're family. But tell me, when was the last time we were treated like people instead of products?" A silence, then his voice again. "Jimin gets to cry on live streams. Jungkook gets the sympathy. But if I say what I feel, I'm dramatic? Disrespectful?" Another pause. And then the words that changed everything. "Let it fall apart. Let it burn. Maybe then they'll finally listen." Namjoon didn't blink. Yoongi sat still, arms crossed, face unreadable. Sukjin leaned back in his chair, gaze fixed on the dark screen like it had stolen something. "Who recorded this?" Namjoon asked, finally breaking the silence. The head of security didn't meet his eyes. Same tech that Doohyun used, different location, same timestamp range. "So it wasn't meant for the public?" Yoongi asked. "No," the security chief replied. "Not yet." Namjoon stood and walked to the window. The skyline outside Seoul stretched pale under heavy clouds. Rain would come, that much was certain. "Where's Taehyung now?" he asked without turning. The assistant spoke carefully. In the vocal room. Alone. Does he know this exists? No. Namjoon didn't speak. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if trying to stop a wave already too close to the shore. Don't leak this, he said. We won't. Seal the room. Burn every access log. If this goes public, we won't just be handling fandom war. We'll be handling collapse. Understood. Namjoon turned to Yoongi. Get Jungkook and Jimin. They need to hear this too. Azur. Downstairs, the studio floor was empty, echoing with the hum of distant monitors and fluorescent light. Jungkook had just finished recording his final harmony for an upcoming track, earbuds still in, voice still vibrating with the rawness of yesterday's apology. He didn't hear Young come in. Jungkook, Yoongi said. Flat but urgent, Jungkook turned. You need to come upstairs. Now. What happened? Taehyung. What about him? Yoongi didn't answer. Not until they reached the elevator, and the doors slid shut between them and everything below. Then he said, There's another video. Jungkook's body froze, but Yoongi added quietly. He didn't leak it. He doesn't even know it was recorded. Jungkook's heart pounded. Then, what does it show? Yoongi looked him in the eyes. It shows the truth. His truth. When they entered the room, the air was heavy. Jimin was already there, sitting in the corner like he was trying to make himself smaller. Seokjin stood against the wall, arms crossed. Namjoon nodded at Yoongi, who pressed play again. Jungkook watched the entire clip in silence. Every word, every breath. He felt the burn in his chest spread like wildfire. I didn't know he felt that way, he said finally. No one did, Jimin whispered. Namjoon looked at the group. This is more than just resentment. It's fracture, and it didn't start with him. Everyone knew what that meant. They had ignored it for months. Brushed it off when Taehyung withdrew, when he showed up late, when his answers in interviews became vague and polite. He still smiled, still danced, still gave every ounce of himself on stage. But they hadn't seen him behind the curtain. Or worse, they had seen, and said nothing. Yoongi spoke next. We can't approach him like this, not as a group, not with confrontation. He needs to know we heard him, Jungkook said, and that we're not here to silence him, Jimin added. Namjoon nodded. I'll talk to him, Jungkook said. Namjoon raised an eyebrow. You sure? He talked to me when I broke down, when no one else did. Let me return the favor. Aware. The vocal room was dark except for a single warm light glowing above the grand piano. Taehyung sat on the bench, hunched slightly, his hands ghosting over the keys but not playing. Just resting, thinking. Jungkook stood in the doorway for a moment, watching. Then stepped inside. You always sit here when you're about to disappear, Jungkook said softly. Taehyung didn't look up. You found me anyway. I wasn't looking for you, Jungkook said. I was listening. That made Taehyung glance over, just slightly. I heard what you said, Jungkook continued. Not just the anger, the exhaustion, the grief. Taehyung's jaw tightened. I didn't mean for it to be recorded, he said. I know. There was a long pause. I meant what I said, though, Taehyung whispered. I know, Jungkook repeated. I love this group. I love what we've built. But I've been hurting, watching everyone else get permission to fall apart while I'm expected to stay beautiful and quiet. He finally looked up, eyes raw, exposed. I thought no one cared, that if I burned out, they'd just replace me with another face. Jungkook's throat tightened. They can't replace you, he said. Taehyung shook his head. That's what you think. That's not what Hybe thinks. That's not what the world thinks. Jungkook crossed the room and sat beside him on the bench. You matter, he said. You matter more than the performance, more than the perfection, more than the image they sold. Taehyung didn't cry, but something in his shoulders eased. They're going to spin this, aren't they? He asked after a moment. Only if we let them. Taehyung turned to him. What if we don't? Jungkook didn't blink. Then we take control. And for that night, Taehyung posted. Not a note. Not a statement. A video. Just his face. No makeup. No lighting. Just him. I wasn't supposed to say it out loud, he said. But I did. Because I needed to. He paused. And maybe some of you feel the same. He talked for 15 minutes. About burnout. About fear. About feeling invisible behind the glow of fame. He didn't blame anyone. He didn't ask for pity. He just told the truth. And the world listened. Millions watched. Millions shared. The comments flooded with love, tears, confessions. And something shifted. For the first time in years, it wasn't just about the image of BTS. It was about the souls behind it. The boys, the brothers, the humans. And Taehyung, who thought he was screaming into a void, heard the echo return. This time, not alone. The silence inside HYBE's 17th floor executive boardroom was brutal. You could hear the hum of the central ventilation system, the faint tapping of a nervous foot against a polished marble floor, and the occasional clink of a coffee cup being returned to its saucer too hard. Bang Si-hyuk didn't speak at first. He just stared at the massive screen at the far end of the room, where the live reaction count on Taehyung's video kept climbing. 8 million. Then 9. Now 11. It hadn't even been 12 hours. A few feet away, one of the global marketing directors shifted uncomfortably. We didn't approve this. There was no PR alignment, no filters, no control. Bang finally spoke, without turning his head. Because he didn't ask for our approval. The room froze. No one dared respond. Not yet. He finally swiveled his chair toward them, gaze unreadable behind rimless glasses. And now the entire narrative has slipped out of our hands. Not only has BTS exposed internal dysfunction, they've shattered the illusion we've built for over a decade. A younger executive tried to interject. But the fan response, I don't care about the fan response, Bang snapped. I care about precedent. What happens when the next artist thinks they can speak freely without clearance? What happens when the world no longer believes we are in control? The word control echoed. Everyone heard it. Everyone knew it was the truth they weren't supposed to say aloud. But it had finally slipped. Just like the grip HYBE had on the 7 boys who'd made them a global empire. They're fracturing, said the head of international partnerships quietly. Even if they don't realize it yet. First, the Jungkook video. Then Jimin's cousin. Now Taehyung's confession. We have instability in 3 of the 7. It's no longer a public perception issue. It's structural collapse. Bang didn't blink. Then let it collapse, he said coldly. Let it fall. And when it does, we'll be the ones who decide what rises in its place. There was a beat of stunned silence. And then, from the far end of the room, came the unmistakable voice of someone no one had expected to walk in. Not if we rebuild it ourselves. Every head turned. Jungkook stood in the doorway, hood up, voice calm, but the fire behind his eyes unmistakable. Yoongi stood just behind him, arms crossed. Seokjin followed, Namjoon too, Jimin, Hoseok, and finally, Taehyung. All 7, in the same room, at the same time, together. Bang stood slowly. This is a closed meeting. Not anymore, said Namjoon. We're here to reclaim the narrative, not just for the group, but for the truth. You're not media strategists, one of the legal officers muttered. No, Jungkook said. We're the product. We're the name you sell, the image you manipulate. But we're also the people living it, bleeding for it, breaking under it. We've done what you asked for 10 years, said Taehyung. No questions, no arguments, no humanity. And we're done, said Yoongi. Bang Si-hyuk stepped forward. You think walking in here with dramatics and emotion is going to change anything? No, said Jimin, but the numbers will. He dropped a folder on the table. Inside, projections from Taehyung's unscripted video, fan engagement spikes, record-breaking comment activity, purchase trends on BTS albums, streaming surges. Unfiltered vulnerability had generated more connection than any pre-approved campaign in the last 2 years. Bang looked at it, then looked at them. You're playing a dangerous game. Namjoon met his eyes. So are you. Bang narrowed his gaze. And what exactly do you want? We want the power to tell our stories, said Hoseok. We want control of what goes out with our names on it, said Seokjin. We want our humanity back, said Jungkook. Bang Si-hyuk looked at them all, one by one, measuring. And then, for the first time in years, he saw something in their eyes he hadn't seen since their rookie days. Defiance. The kind that couldn't be managed with a stern meeting or a controlled press statement. He straightened his blazer. Then you'll get it, but don't forget the cost. Jungkook didn't flinch. We already paid it. The news broke within the hour. HYBE released a short, cold statement announcing a temporary pause in centralized creative oversight for BTS. It was jargon, a corporate way of saying, they're doing what they want now. The fandom erupted. Army turned every social platform into a battlefield of emotion, support, speculation, and chaos. But within the noise, something beautiful happened. Unity. For the first time since the leak, all sides of the fandom Jimin defenders, Jungkook sympathizers, taehyung truthers stood together. They understood now. This wasn't member versus member. This was artist versus system. The hashtags changed. Let BTS speak. They deserve freedom, not just idols. And then, quietly, another phrase started trending. What about Namjoon? Because somewhere in the firestorm, fans had begun digging. And they'd found something. A clip from an old live broadcast, long since deleted, archived by a fan in 2019. Namjoon alone staring into the camera late at night, responding to a comment about stress and leadership. I don't sleep much, he'd said. Not because of schedules, because I carry things I can't share. The clip resurfaced with new eyes, and it spread. Fans began questioning everything. What had Namjoon been hiding? What had he been forced to carry? The pressure began mounting again, but this time not on Jimin, not on Taehyung, not even on Hybe. Now it was Namjoon in the spotlight, and the weight of it pressed down fast. And, in the studio, Namjoon sat alone at the piano. He didn't hear Jungkook enter. Young, Jungkook said softly. Namjoon didn't turn. They're coming for me next. Jungkook stepped forward. Do you want to talk about it? No. A long pause. Then Namjoon added, but maybe I should. Jungkook sat beside him. Namjoon's voice was quiet, almost a whisper. I've known about the system for years. The corruption, the manipulation, the price behind every sponsorship, every restriction. I didn't speak because I thought I could protect you all from the worst parts. His hands shook slightly, but maybe all I did was delay the pain. Jungkook's throat tightened. You carried everything for us, and it nearly killed me, Namjoon admitted. There were nights I stared at the ceiling and asked myself if I even knew who I was anymore. Silence. Then Jungkook said, then let's not pretend anymore. Not you, not me, not any of us. Namjoon turned to him, and for the first time in a long time, he let the tears fall. Not from weakness, but from relief. They weren't idols anymore. They were survivors, and they weren't done fighting. The moment Yoongi found the encrypted folder, he felt the blood drain from his face. He wasn't even supposed to be there. He'd stayed late in the production room to export a demo. That was all. Nothing more. But a misnamed folder caught his eye tucked inside a root drive of the internal Hybe server, listed under a random string of numbers. He clicked it out of reflex. And everything changed. He knew what he was looking at within 5 seconds. It was surveillance. Not fan cams. Not rehearsal videos. Réelle surveillance. A hidden archive of off-the-record studio audio logs, internal locker room recordings, personal practice footage from rooms the members assumed were private. Some of the file names had timestamps that were months old. Some had the members' names on them. There was one labeled RM, Confession, 2022, WA, EBUAG. Another said Jimin, StudioBreakdown.mey. And one more simply read JK, corner footage, raw. He didn't need to open that one to know what it was. Yoongi sat still, his hands cold, his breathing shallow. What the hell had they been living inside? He copied the folder to a hidden drive and deleted the access history. Then he left the building without finishing his demo. His heart was thudding at a pattern that made him feel sick. By the time he reached Namjoon's apartment, he didn't knock. He walked in using the security code because of course they all had each other's codes. They had been closer than family. Now, that closeness felt like a weakness someone else had exploited. Namjoon looked up from his desk, confused. What happened? Sit down, Yoongi said, breathless. When he showed him the files, Namjoon didn't speak for 3 full minutes. Then his hands closed into fists, and he whispered, They were spying on us. I think they still are. Namjoon's eyes snapped to him. We assumed those side rooms were safe. The vocal booths, the storage corridors. I think they were mic'd. Maybe the cameras weren't visible, but the audio. Yoongi swallowed. They heard everything. Namjoon stood up hard. This is beyond illegal, he said. Yoongi nodded. It's surveillance. not security. Namjoon began pacing. How long have they had this? What have they done with it? I don't know yet, but there's more. There's a document, not a file. A list. A list? Yoongi opened another folder. Inside was a document titled Risk Matrix Subject BTS. Namjoon read the first few lines and froze. Each member was listed, next to their names. Psychological notes, triggers, projected emotional volatility scores, leverage points. There were even private details, hospital visits, therapist notes, arguments, phrases said in confidence during breaks that were never meant to be remembered. Next to Namjoon's name, it said, Leader Paradox. Highly loyal, but dangerously introspective. Risk of rebellion if overburdened. Suppresses resentment. Watch closely. Next to Jungkook's, perfectionist instability, risk of emotional collapse under pressure. Idolized by fans, protected image required. Monitor self-worth spirals. Next to Taehyung's, emotional nonconformist, unpredictable. Low tolerance for hypocrisy. High likelihood of public confession when trust breaks. And Jimin, shame-driven compliance, overextends to please, collapses inward before exploding outward. Carefully manage interpersonal feedback. Namjoon sank into a chair, the paper trembling in his hand. They mapped us like weapons, he said. Like bombs, Yoongi whispered. There was a knock at the door. Namjoon didn't move. Yoongi opened it. It was Taehyung. He had seen the trending hashtag. The fans were now unearthing every video from years past, dissecting old interactions, trying to find signs. And they were close to something. You need to come with me, he said. They didn't ask where. Zerily. 15 minutes later, they were in a closed stairwell, 6 floors below the main Hybe studio wing. Hoseok, Seokjin, Jimin, and Jungkook were already there. No cameras, no staff, just cement walls and truth. Yoongi plugged the drive into his phone and played the first file. Jimin's breath caught in his throat the moment he heard his own voice from 6 months ago. A moment he barely remembered, whispering in the hallway to Taehyung after a particularly hard rehearsal. I think sometimes I'm more performance than person. And Taehyung replying, maybe that's what they wanted us to become. Jimin turned away from the sound, like it physically hurt. They played another. Namjoon, whispering late at night. If one of us breaks, the rest will follow. We're held together by fear. Taehyung's jaw was clenched so tightly, it looked painful. Hoseok sat down on the floor, hands over his mouth. Who did this? Seokjin whispered. Someone on the inside, Yoongi said. Someone with authority and a reason to contain us. Bang? Jungkook asked. No. He's too careful. This isn't control. This is entrapment. Namjoon looked at him. Who benefits from watching us destroy ourselves? Yoongi said nothing for a long time. Then, carefully, I think someone inside the company wants to fracture BTS slowly, surgically, to make room for a replacement. They all went still. Namjoon nodded slowly. The new group, the one they've been quietly developing, Yoongi added. They're similar enough to ride the wave. Young, visual, trained in-house, but without the baggage, without the rebellion, and without the power to say no, Taehyung whispered. BTS was supposed to age out, Yoongi continued. But we didn't. We kept rising. We became too big to control. And now, they're sabotaging from the inside. It made sick, twisted sense. If you couldn't fire kings, you dethroned them quietly. Let them implode. Let them become their own scandal. Namjoon stood. I'm not letting that happen. Jungkook looked up. So what do we do? We go public. Yoongi blinked. You sure? Namjoon's eyes were fire. They made a mistake when they recorded our worst moments, but they made a bigger mistake thinking we'd be ashamed of them. Jimin stood next. I'm done hiding. Taehyung reached for the drive. Then let's show them what humanity looks like. That night, without approval, without filter, BTS went live. All 7. One stream. No stylists. No script. Just the truth. Namjoon sat in the middle and spoke first. What you're about to hear is hard. It may change how you see us, but it's the truth, and we trust you to hear it. They didn't share everything. Not the darkest pieces. Not the names. But they shared enough. Enough to break the silence. Enough to burn the mask. They played clips from the surveillance. Talked about what it meant to feel watched. controlled, reduced. They cried. But they didn't apologize for it. They exposed the truth not as victims but as survivors. And the world watched, in silence, then in grief, then in fury. Within 2 hours, Protect BTS was trending #1 globally. Then came the demands, investigations, legal pressure, a full audit of HYBE from the National Media Ethics Commission, and the beginning of something no one had seen coming. A rebellion, led not by the members, but by the fans. Not screaming, not fighting, but organizing. Petitions, open letters, boycotts of BTS merchandise under HYBE's umbrella, and support campaigns for the boys themselves, independent, self-funded, transparent. The message was clear. If HYBE didn't protect them, Army would. And somewhere at a dark office, a man whose name BTS didn't yet know sat watching the chaos he hadn't expected to ignite so soon. He wasn't worried. Not yet. He had one more card to play. Because he knew something they didn't. There was still one file they hadn't found. And in it was a secret that could tear them apart for good. It was Jungkook who found the last file. He hadn't been looking for it. Not intentionally. Not after everything they'd already unearthed, said, confessed, burned through. They'd exposed enough, risked enough. He was tired, emotionally unspooled, and had finally allowed himself a few hours in the studio to sing. Not rehearse, not perform, just sing, for himself. But when he stepped into the producer's booth, the monitor was still logged in. One of the external hard drives Yoongi had decrypted was open. Its folders were scattered, most already copied to a backup, but there was one that hadn't been touched. Labeled in Korean as On tidak boleh dilihat. Jungkook hovered for a moment. He told himself to walk away. But he didn't. He clicked. There was only one file inside. TAE. Record. Full. MP4. He blinked. His pulse jumped. Not because he expected anything terrible, but because of the name. Taehyung's. And because they'd already released the full truth days ago. What could be left? The moment he opened it, he knew something was wrong. The footage was clear, higher quality than the other surveillance. The angle, too deliberate. Not an accidental hidden camera. Someone had placed this with intent. The timestamp was from weeks before the public collapse, before Jungkook broke, before the confrontation with Jimin, even before the first sign of tension surfaced. Taehyung was in the room, not talking to anyone, just him. Speaking into the silence, as if prompted. Jungkook's breath caught when he heard the first words. I know what they're doing. The voice was Taehyung's, but flat. Cold, resigned. They want us to break apart slowly. Divide. Bleed. They think we'll destroy each other eventually. A pause. Taehyung looked straight into the camera. I can make it easier. Jungkook sat down, barely able to move. I can be the first to fall. It'll pull the attention toward me. Away from Jungkook, from Jimin, from the others. I can absorb the impact, trigger the shift, let them start blaming me. He blinked slowly. But I'll need protection. Afterward. You promised me that. There was silence. Then Taehyung leaned forward, as if responding to someone off screen. But no voice could be heard. I'll say what you want. Do what's needed. Just keep the deal. Once this is over, I walk. The screen went black. Jungkook stared at it for a full minute. Then he stood, closed the file, and left the room without a word. He didn't confront Taehyung immediately. He couldn't. His head was spinning too hard. The betrayal was too surreal, too calculated, too strategic. But the pain wasn't from the strategy. It was from the sacrifice. Taehyung had thrown himself to the wolves, voluntarily, to protect the rest of them. And no one knew. Not until now. Hours later, Jungkook stood alone at the rooftop garden, gripping the steel railing hard enough to make his knuckles pale. He heard the footsteps behind him before the voice. You saw it, Taehyung said. Jungkook didn't turn around. You weren't supposed to. Jungkook laughed, humorless, bitter. So it's true. Yes. He finally turned. You made a deal. Taehyung nodded once. Jungkook's jaw clenched. With who? Taehyung didn't answer. Who did you speak to? I didn't record myself, Taehyung said instead. They did. They offered me something I thought I could use. I just didn't expect it to hurt so much. Jungkook stepped forward. You sacrificed your name, your image, your peace. Why? Because someone had to bleed first, Taehyung said quietly. And it couldn't be you. That's not your choice. Yes, it is. Jungkook's voice rose. You think I wanted to be protected like that? To see you take every hit while I spiraled publicly and had no idea what you were doing behind the scenes? Taehyung looked down. I thought it would end quickly, he said. But it kept going. I kept falling, and I didn't know how to stop. Jungkook was trembling now. You should have told me. I couldn't. Bullshit. Taehyung looked up, finally locking eyes with him. I knew if I told you you'd stop me, and I couldn't afford to be stopped. Jungkook's voice cracked. And now what? Now I just pretend you didn't turn yourself into the scapegoat to save us all? Do I thank you? Or do I scream? Do whatever you need, Taehyung said, stepping back. Hate me if it helps. Just know I don't regret it. You should. No. I regret letting you find out. Jungkook's eyes were glassy now. You don't get to martyr yourself, Taehyung. You don't get to carry the weight alone anymore. Taehyung's face faltered. I didn't want anyone else to fall. And now we all did, Jungkook said, just slower. The rooftop went silent. Then Jungkook whispered, They used you. Like a pawn. They'll bury you next. Taehyung looked at the horizon. I know. Jungkook turned to leave, then stopped. He said it without looking back. You're not walking away from this. Taehyung didn't respond, but he didn't leave either. And the next morning, Namjoon called an emergency meeting. He already knew about the recording. Jungkook had sent it to him at 3:07 a.m. with no explanation, no caption, just the file. By 3:10, Namjoon couldn't breathe. The others arrived in silence. Taehyung was last to enter. The room was ice. Seokjin looked shell-shocked. Jimin was stone-faced. Hoseok hadn't said a word since he arrived. Yoongi was unreadable. Namjoon stood and held the drive up. Does anyone want to explain why this file exists? Taehyung stepped forward. I made the deal. Who approached you? Namjoon asked. I don't know his name, but he worked for Hybe. Yes. Namjoon's fists clenched. What did they promise you? Freedom, I thought. I could disappear quietly after the damage settled. They said they'd pay me out, that the rest of you wouldn't have to carry the scandal. Jimin stood. You were willing to vanish? Taehyung didn't look at him. Yes, for us? Jimin's voice shook. Or because you were already planning to leave? Taehyung finally met his gaze. Both. Jimin walked out. No one followed. Namjoon sat down heavily. You don't get to decide whose pain is worth more, he said softly. You don't get to carry the bomb and drop it in silence. Taehyung looked at the floor. I thought I was doing the right thing. Yoongi spoke next. They'll come for you next. Now that the truth is out, they'll frame you as a rogue actor. I know. Then let's stop them before they can. Seokjin raised an eyebrow. How? Yoongi looked at the group. We tell everything. Not just about Hybe. About the systems. The silence. The invisible contracts we all signed without knowing it. Namjoon stood again. Not in fragments. Not in live streams. He walked to the center of the room. We make a film. The silence was thick, but something inside it shifted. Jungkook stepped forward. Not for pity. Namjoon nodded. For history. Taehyung looked up, the storm behind his eyes finally breaking. And if it ends everything? Namjoon's voice was calm, certain. Then let it end on our terms. The first day of shooting was not glamorous. It took place in a quiet room deep within the Hybe building, the same building that had for so long become both home and prison. Namjoon sat in front of a black backdrop, the lights cold and white. No makeup, no script, no director, just a camera placed there by Yoongi, and a silence that pressed against his chest like a confession waiting to be spoken. He cleared his throat once. This is not a documentary, he said. His voice trembled slightly. This is a confession. From the control room, Jungkook watched behind the glass. He'd insisted Namjoon go first, though Namjoon had argued he should anchor the project from the end. But Jungkook had looked at him with something unflinching in his eyes and said, You carried all of us in silence. Now let's start by carrying your voice. Namjoon inhaled slowly, glanced at the lens, then said, My name is Kim Namjoon, and I was trained to lie. Outside the room, Taehyung leaned against the wall, listening through the feed. Every word hit like a slow punch to the ribs. They told me I was a leader, that I had to be strong, that my silence would protect them. But it didn't. It turned into a cage. He paused again. I watched Jungkook fall apart in front of a camera. I watched Jimin tear himself into someone he didn't recognize. I watched Taehyung turn himself into the villain because he thought it would save us. And I did nothing. Taehyung closed his eyes. I blamed myself for not falling apart first. Seokjin sat in the editing bay, wiping his face. He hadn't planned to cry. He wasn't even supposed to be there yet. But watching Namjoon speak, raw and unfiltered, broke something in him. This is not an exposé. This is not revenge. This is not a cry for help, Namjoon said. This is what it sounds like when the people you've watched for 10 years finally speak as men, not products. Yoongi signaled the end of the take. Namjoon removed the mic from his shirt collar, walked out of the room, and said nothing. But the look he gave Jungkook as he passed quiet gratitude, fractured pride spoke louder than any lyric he'd ever written. The next to sit was Jimin. He didn't ask for retakes. He didn't blink much. I stopped recognizing my own voice about 3 years ago, he said, his eyes wide and still. Not because it changed, but because I only ever used it for others, never for me. He talked about pressure, about the body shame, the criticism that started as whispers and became rules. They told me I smiled too much, then not enough. They told me I needed to be softer, then sexier, then humble, then louder. Eventually, I realized they didn't want me to exist. They wanted a version of me they could sell. He looked down. I agreed to that, willingly, because I thought it was love. Yoongi didn't cut the feed. Jimin leaned closer to the camera. But love shouldn't erase you. That line alone would trend in every country by midnight. And Jimin knew it, which is why he said it. The others followed in the next days. Yoongi's session was quiet, clinical, no tears. He detailed the contracts, the illegal surveillance, the staff members who turned a blind eye, the executives who treated them like weapons with expiration dates. He named names. The legal team begged him not to. He ignored them. You want real? He said, looking at the camera. Then let's be King real. Hoseok's session broke everyone. It wasn't the anger that stunned them. It was the silence, the long pauses, the struggle to find words. He didn't perform. He trembled. I spent so much time being the sunshine, he whispered, that I forgot how to scream. Seokjin didn't cry. But his pain was loud. I was the eldest, the one who was supposed to hold it all together. I saw every crack, every bruise. Every night someone left a rehearsal and cried in a hallway. And I said nothing, because I thought if I smiled hard enough, maybe it wouldn't be true. He looked off to the side. Turns out it was. We just weren't allowed to say it. Taehyung was last. He waited until midnight, when the building was mostly empty. He requested no crew.